But yeah, good afternoon and welcome everybody to the final session of today, where I'm joined by Daria from Bloomberg. So Daria's here to tell you how to maximise your chances of submitting a successful application for their apprenticeship roles in London. So she'll be telling you what Bloomberg are looking for on a CV and on an application form, as well as giving you the inside scoop on the application and interview process. So what she'll be doing is running through a presentation that I think, Daria, you'd say yourself, it's split into two halves, and we'll pull questions and ask them at the end of each section, I think is the best way to do it. But Daria, if you want to pause at any other point, just tell me. For everybody else that's watching as well, this session is being recorded. It will be emailed through to the person who's registered. So it's going to be a resource that you can continue to use after this kind of hour. But I think without further ado, by the way, there's nearly 1,000 people here now. I'm just going to dip out, let you carry on, and then you just give me the nod when you want me to do the questions. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And no pressure for me, 1,000 people. Wow. Right. So without further ado, I just wanted to make a start to our session around how to submit a winning application. And I wanted to introduce myself. So I was supposed to deliver this session with my colleague, Jamie. Unfortunately, it will be just me today. So my name is Daria Dobrzyniecka, and I run an apprenticeship program at Bloomberg. So I've been with Bloomberg for the last 2 years, and I've been in early careers recruitment for the last 7 years, which means that I come with a lot of experience in early careers hiring. And this is where I would be in a position to share all of my experience with you and to probably give you some hints and tips as to how you can do really well in your recruitment process. So what we will be covering today is kind of similar to what your recruitment journey with any employer would be. I know that going through any recruitment process might be stressful, especially so early on in your career. And this is why I come with this presentation today to help you manage that stress, help you prepare, and make sure that you can perform to the best of your abilities. So we are going to mimic typical recruitment process where, first of all, you write your CV, and typically you also need to submit some form of an application form. Then we are going to talk a little bit about interview preparation, and I would love to cover topics of video and remote interviews as well as assessment days. And then at the end of our presentation today, we will also have some time for me to highlight to you what kind of opportunities we have available at Bloomberg and to answer some questions as well. So as Heather mentioned, if at any point you feel like there is anything you wanted to ask me, then feel free to put your question in the chat and we will try to tackle them as we go along. But also there will be some dedicated time at the end of the session today so that we can make sure that at the end, once we've been through all of this content, we can focus a bit more on your specific questions as well. Okay? So I'm going to start with CV writing because I feel like it's something that is very daunting, especially when you don't have that much experience and that much content to add to your CV. And the first thing that I wanted you to do is to think about what is the purpose of a CV and what are the traits of a good CV. So obviously from our perspective, from recruiter perspective, your CV and application form are basically the first opportunity for us to get to know you. So we use those CVs to, first of all, just get a brief basic understanding of who you are as a person and what is your profile. But then also very often we use your CV to basically identify whether you are the right candidate for the role and whether you meet eligibility criteria for that role. That means that some employers will be asking you to have certain subjects or certain grades for your GCSEs. Some employers will be looking at your A-levels or maybe BTEC or maybe international baccalaureate. Other employers might be a little bit more flexible, but they still want to understand what your academic background and what your work experience looks like. So we are going to start with the basics, and I really wanted us to think a little bit about what a good CV should consist of. So in this table, in this slide, you can see the most necessary information that you should include. So let's start from the very top of your CV. This is where typically you would include your name, surname, and this is where you would need to provide a little bit of detail with regards to your contact information. It's very important for you to put correct information in there. The reason for that is because if for whatever reason we are unable to use the contact details that you provided in your application form, so let's say there is a technical glitch or for whatever reason information went missing, we go to your CV and we check your phone number and your email address in there, and that's another way of us being able to reach you. So this is where you should put your name, address, phone number, and email address. We do get a lot of questions as to whether you should be adding other details like date of birth or maybe your marital status or maybe something else. But the answer is no. Name, address, phone number, and email address are the only details that us as recruiters and us as an employer would need to proceed or to not proceed with your application. So there's no need for any more data there. You may want to include personal statement. Now, what is a personal statement? Basically, it is 2-3 sentences where you tell us about yourself, who you are as a person, and what your career aspirations are. It is a way of just introducing yourself a little bit more beyond raw facts and figures as to what education you've completed and what work experience you've had so far. So from that perspective, no one is going to mark you down if you don't have a personal statement, but it's definitely something that will add value and will help you to stand out in the CV screening process. And then typically you would have either your education or your work experience. So it doesn't really matter what is the order, which one comes first. What is important is so that you put your work experience and your education in chronological order. So that means that it can go from the most recent down to the oldest one or the other way around. For education, again, it would be really useful if you could be very specific about the subjects that you took and the grades, even if they are predicted grades. For your job summary, it's very important to be clear about the dates, about the company name, job title, and then also some responsibilities or achievements. And then at the bottom of your CV, typically you could add another section for your skills or competencies, and also any extracurricular activities, any voluntary work, charity work, and other projects. Now, many students wonder whether it's necessary to include your interests, but I can assure you that, again, no one is going to mark you down if you don't have interest in there. We do love to read about them because, again, it's another opportunity to just get to know you a little bit better as a person and add that personal touch to your application form and your CV. So in terms of what that CV should look like, I just wanted to give you a really quick snippet of what good structure would be. This is a very advanced CV, which means that I do not expect you to have as much detail as you can see in here. But what you can definitely get inspiration for in here is the really clear headline. So you have very clear headline for education, for work experience, for the profile, and other stuff as well. You can see that in green, you've got all of the A-level results clearly outlined alongside with the grades, so that as a recruiter, I don't need to wonder, okay, so A-star was for which subject? What was the time of that? Everything is very clear and concise. And also you can see that in terms of skills, in terms of languages, all of that is nicely listed in the skills and interests section. So let's have a bit of a deep dive as to what a good CV should look like. So first of all, the best piece of advice that I can give you is to make sure that your CV is clear, neat, and easy to follow. As recruiters, we review hundreds of CVs every day, which means that we need to be able to navigate them easily and quickly, and we need to be able to find the relevant pieces of information in a fairly quick time. So what that means in practice is that ideally I would like your CV to come in A4 format, and I would like it to be just a one-pager. I truly believe that for someone who is leaving academia, it's really not necessary to have more than one page of a CV. So from that perspective, you really want to keep the most important stuff in there, and you want to make sure that you trim it down to one page. You also want to make sure that all of the font types and sizes are aligned. And you also want to make sure that there are no typos or grammar mistakes. What I would advise you to do is to actually give your CV to someone else so that they can proofread it for you. And the reason why I'm saying that is because it's very common to not be able to spot your own mistakes. So you read your CV, and you still cannot see where you went wrong. This is where giving it to your teacher, career advisor, to a colleague, to your parent, family member is a really useful tip, and really something that could help you enhance your application. And then last but not least, the format. So ideally, we would like you to save your CV in PDF format. The reason for that is because A, that means that it will be much more difficult to edit whatever you have in your resume. And second of all, it is a better format for majority of computers and systems and softwares. So from that perspective, it's more likely that we will be able to open it and view it properly when it's saved in PDF. So then we talked a little bit about personal statement. What would good personal statement look like? Ideally, I would like you to tell me about who you are. So you could start by saying, final year sixth form college student applying for roles within fintech sector. Then second sentence would be typically to tell us a bit more about your skills and your abilities. So you may say proficient in coding with great collaboration and communication skills. And then the third sentence should be typically with regards to the career path that you would imagine for yourself, your career goals and aspirations. So you may say, currently applying for roles within such and such industry, looking to build on my understanding of financial markets, for example. So that's more or less what you should include in your personal statement. Again, it's something that is a nice to have, not a must have, but it's definitely something that will help you take your application and your resume to the next level. So then let's talk a little bit about your work experience. I think that it's very difficult to, again, talk about your experiences, especially when they are fairly similar and when you haven't had an opportunity to work in a great amount of places. So from that perspective, what I would encourage you to do is to list maximum 2-3 bullet points per job with regards to what your roles and responsibilities were. And if you can, try to focus on relevant work experience. So when I say relevant, it doesn't mean that if you're applying for a job in a bank, you need to demonstrate that you have experience in banking, but I would need you to think about something that we call transferable skills. So let's say that you had a summer job in a restaurant or in a charity shop. I need you to think about what skills from that role will be useful and will help you in the role that you're currently applying for. So let's say that you worked in a restaurant. you may not have much experience in banking and finance itself, but a job in restaurant probably gave you amazing communication skills, and it gave you an opportunity to interact with clients. So it's very likely that you will be able to use those skills in your next role within banking sector. So this is what I mean when I talk about relevant work experience. Now, another hint that I can give you is to use action words in past tense. So you may say, served hundreds of customers on a weekly basis. You can say collected orders from X, Y, and Z customers. And what it does is that this past tense really helps to increase your credibility, and again brings and adds some structure to your CV so that I can clearly see what your roles and responsibilities were. Another aspect of talking about your work experience is referring to some facts and figures and some tangible results. So if there are any numbers, if there are any brackets, any specific things that you can add to your responsibilities, again, it's going to help you to add more credibility and more facts to your CV as well. It's worth using skills and interest section to list any relevant courses or qualifications, as again, it's going to help you show and demonstrate your match for the role. So if you completed any courses online, any LinkedIn learning, if you, for example, have done any coding courses or any language courses, then feel free to add it in your interest section and be very clear about level of your skills as well. Again, interest section is a nice to have, but it's always fun reading those interests and those hobbies that you list there. So from that perspective, if you want to share that with us, we are always happy to review that part of your resume as well. And then last but not least, I would encourage you to use the extracurricular activities section as a way to demonstrate your cultural fit. So if you know that your future employer is very keen on charity work, like we are here at Bloomberg, or if you know that they are very keen on teamwork, then you may want to include activities, experiences that would again demonstrate that you've already had experience in those areas. So again, you might have done your Duke of Edinburgh Award. That is going to demonstrate some problem solving, some collaboration skills. Maybe you have done some charity projects or some charity work. Again, it will show your care for corporate responsibility, sustainability, and charity work. So try to be very strategic about it and try to include it in your CV if you can. Finally, we have application form. So an application form is basically an addition to your CV. So typically it gives you an opportunity to elaborate on different points from your resume. Typically you would have a number of very specific questions that we would need you to answer, whether it's with regards to your motivation, whether it's with regards to your availability for the role. Please remember that it is a formal part of the recruitment process. So it's very important for you to fill those spaces and to answer all of those questions. Please do not leave them blank. And also, if there is any word limit, try to provide an answer that is more or less within that word limit. So what I'm trying to say is that if there is a limit of 500 words, probably we are looking for an answer between 400 and 500 words rather than just 100. What it does when you provide a very short answers, or you say an A, or you say, well, my favorite is check my CV and you will know, is that it doesn't really show much engagement and much passion for the role. And obviously we want to hire candidates who are truly interested and excited about an opportunity. I would say research and target your employer, because if you are asked about your motivation, you want to show an understanding of the role that you're applying for and the company itself. And I would also say be quite strategic when it comes to your planning and different deadlines. Do not leave submitting your application to the very last minute, because what often happens is that we fill our roles on first come, first served basis. And if at any point during our recruitment process, we feel like we have a very strong pipeline and very strong candidates, we may close this role, this posting before the deadline. So from that perspective, you don't want to miss out on opportunity, and you really want to make sure that you have time to not only complete your application form, but also go through all of the answers and make sure that there are no mistakes, that you can save a copy, and that you can submit a really well prepared application form. So I'm going to park it in here. And Heather, I wanted to check whether we have any questions with regards to CV writing and application form, because I know that we've just covered a huge amount of, CV writing skills.
Yeah.
And I wanted to give everyone an opportunity to just park it in here before we move on to interview process.
Definitely. We've had 10 or so questions,
okay.
So there's a lot to go through. Some have like an overarching theme. So there's been questions around AI and bots scanning CVs. The question is, A, is that true? And B, if it is, how can somebody make their CV stand out to a bot, so to speak?
Yeah, definitely. That's a very good question. And I feel like my answer may not be even relevant in another year or so. So at the moment, as it is, there are companies that are using AI and bots already. And there are employers who still screen CVs manually. Here at Bloomberg, we screen CVs manually, and they are screened by recruiters. So that means that the person that you're going to have your interview with probably was the same person who screened your CV as well. With regards to how you can stand out if it's all automated and if it's actually artificial intelligence that is screening your CV, I would say that, first of all, the most important part is to make sure that you meet eligibility criteria, because the main reason for using chatbots and artificial intelligence is to speed up the process. So it might be that they are not even looking for any specific traits or any specific words, but they are mainly checking whether you achieved AAB or 300 UCAS points or whatever the criteria is. I would say the second piece of advice is that if they are looking for any specific words and you to be a good match for the role, then you will typically find all of those words in the job description. So if the job description is saying that necessary skills are teamwork, communication skills, customer focus, problem solving, you want to make sure that within your skills, within your work experience, you do include those keywords from the job description.
Brilliant. That's really helpful. Thank you. Quick one here. Somebody asked, should I add a photo to my CV?
Another great question. So I would say no. Majority of employers is moving towards blind CV screening process, which means that we are even removing your name and your personal details, so that when recruiters see your CV, they solely see your work experience, education, but they don't see anything that can help us identify what background you're coming from, what is your wider context. So from that perspective, picture is absolutely not needed, and no one should really be asking you for a picture at CV screening stage. So from that perspective, I would say no, feel free to just not include your photo.
Brilliant. That's very good advice. Another quick question. Would you suggest using colours on your CV other than black?
So there are different schools. I would say that if it's still within professional, kind of style, then I think it's good to have a way of highlighting what the headlines are and what the different categories are. Myself, I have dark blue, well, blue in my CV. So the only blues are the headlines, and then everything else is just black. You can also use the bold function, or just different formatting functions, but try to not add multiple colors. So I would stick to potentially just two that are fairly professional and not that flashy, but I wouldn't say no to two colors.
Interesting. Okay. There's a question here saying, do recruiters check your qualifications and how do they find them? And then there was a side note to say, I don't even know where I'd find it myself.
That's a very good question. So I would say at CV screening stage, we trust you that what you put in your CV is matching reality and your achievements. So at that stage, probably no one is going to check this. What is going to happen if you are successful in securing a role is that we will carry out background checks on you. And that's for majority of employers. It's not just for Bloomberg. It is a standard procedure that we would need to verify your identity and your profile as a candidate. So from that perspective, this is where whoever is conducting background checks would go to your school and would request official certificates from them to basically have evidence that what you told us in your application form and your CV is matching reality. So from that perspective, yes, there is a form of a check, but it's much later in the recruitment process.
Brilliant. Very helpful again. There were a few questions around there's people's CVs looking quite scarce. I know that you mentioned that for you, one page is suffice at this stage in a career. And there was another one that I think can be linked as well. What can you say if you've been unemployed for a while? So I suppose the overarching question is, how do you not compromise on the quality of your CV, but if you don't have very much experience or you have been out of work for a while, how can you make that into a positive?
Yeah, definitely. So I think it's a very tricky question and something that you definitely want to think about. I think ultimately you want to demonstrate who you are as a person, and you also want to demonstrate that you are quite proactive. So even if you've had any gaps in your employment, for whatever reason, you might be a career changer, you might be going on a mat leave or paternity leave, you may have had some health issues, different things happen to all of us. I think what is important is to identify even the small things that you've done in the meantime that will help you enhance your CV. So from that perspective, it is always worth to enroll yourself to a LinkedIn learning course or to, some presentation or some conference, and to add those activities to your CV so that even though you may not have been in formal employment, there was something that you were doing in order to grow as a person and grow professionally. When it comes to your CV at the very early stages of your career, again, I would say, look, no one is expecting for you to come and have like 10 years of experience. We do understand that as a school leaver, you will have a fairly limited amount of experience in your CV, but at the same time, especially now with all of the virtual opportunities available to you, it is so easy to add value to your CV and to just enroll to different initiatives, to different projects, even if it's a presentation, even if it's attending a session with us here during this event, even if it's a virtual work experience with another company. There are so many things that you can do virtually in a fairly short period of time that will really add value to your CV. So go and find them and then add them to your resume as well.
Brilliant. Great words of advice once again. And final question on this topic, unless anybody wants to put any into the chat while we're just answering this. I think it's a genuine question. It's what's the best way to adapt a CV to different employers? I suppose we would all like to think that somebody's applying to one role and one role only, but I'm sure it's just not the case for so many people out there. And I know you did say, you mentioned research and target the employer specifically. You use those words, but within a CV or application, what can you say how could you advise on actively communicating that well?
That's a very good question. And trust me, as recruiters, we know that potentially you're applying for 10 to 20 other roles. That's for graduate market. So that's what graduates are applying for. So I'm not deluded that we are your dream company and, you don't want any other job. In majority of situations, you just want to gain some initial work experience, and you're just looking for a nice company with friendly working environment that is more or less within area of your interest. So that's completely fine. I would say with regards to how to cater your application form or your CV, the easiest thing you can do and leverage is your personal statement. So again, the first sentence about who you are, second sentence about your skills, third sentence is about what you are looking for. Have a look at employer's website, have a look at their values, have a look at the role itself and what the job will entail, and change that last sentence to reflect your alignment with that role and to reflect how this application is relevant to the job description and the role in question. That's number one. Number two, if you want to put a little bit more effort into it, go through your work experiences, and if you can find any overarching themes or topics for your past work experiences and this new role, then tweak and tailor your work experience so that, again, you're almost saying, okay, the job description says you should have communication skills. In your roles and responsibilities, you say communicated with X, Y, and Z people, or communicated with all of the students in year 13. And this way, it will even help you to stand out even more and to really show your alignment with what we are looking for.
Brilliant. Super helpful. Right, there's no more questions on this topic, so I think that's my cue to disappear and let you continue with the rest of the session. But thanks, that's brilliant.
No problem. Okay, so we finished with an application form and we are now moving more towards interview stage. Many employers, instead of an interview, first of all, will invite you for an assessment day. So let's focus on assessment day first, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about wider interview preparation. So when it comes to, oops, not yet. I will try to go back. So when it comes to an assessment day, I feel like there is a number of things that I can do in order to prepare, to feel comfortable, and to make sure that you have your stress under control. Now, an assessment day is typically a way for us to see you, first of all, in group environment, and to assess multiple candidates at the same time. So from recruiter's perspective, it is to make sure that we not only see you solo, but also working with others. But also because we receive so many applications, it is a way of speeding up a process and making sure that we are fairly effective and efficient, progressing candidates to the next stages. What you can do in order to prepare is, first of all, to test technology. Unfortunately, we are still fighting with the pandemic, and in majority of cases, you would be asked to complete your assessment day virtually. So from that perspective, you really want to make sure that you check what the platform is going to be on. Is it Zoom? Is it Teams? Is it Google Hangouts? What is the platform? Go and check the functionality on that platform. How do you put yourself on mute? How do you use the chat functionality? You really want to cover all of those bases before you actually move into that assessment day. With regards to testing technology, you also want to make sure that you have stable internet connection, that you have a reliable headset, reliable facilities around you, so that there is no additional stress on the day. So I would try to encourage you to figure all of that out before you actually go to the day. If you need to complete your assessment day somewhere else, not at home, check whether you can go to a library and have a room in a library. Check whether there is anywhere else where you can feel comfortable and have some quiet space to complete that activity with us. I would say also it's really important to prepare. So with regards to preparation, I probably think more about content. There are some elements of an assessment day that you can always anticipate and expect. That would probably be a group exercise that I mentioned before. That would probably be some form of logical or problem-solving assessment. It could be a role play, depending on the role, or it could be an interview. So from that perspective, before your assessment day, you want to check with your recruiter what is the exact format of the day, what is going to be the length of different exercises, how many exercises will you have on the day, and also any other insight they can share with you. They may say that they will not be able to share much and that you will find out on the day. They may say that they want you to have an element of surprise because it's a part of their recruitment process. But at the same time, majority of recruitment teams will be able to either offer you a preparation call or just offer you a little bit more insight as to what you will be covering on the day. If it's a group exercise, think about what is being assessed during that kind of activity. It's not only about you demonstrating your leadership skills, which many candidates get a little bit confused about, but it's mainly about your collaboration and communication skills. So you want to really make sure that you are successful as a group, not as an individual, because your individual success comes from success of your group. When it comes to technical assessments, typically there isn't much that you can prepare. So if there is a coding test or if there is an analysis test, probably you will not be able to do awfully lot to prepare. But at the same time, knowing what you will be covering during the day is going to help you feel more confident and more comfortable when those activities come up. Then listen and observe. This is very situational, and I feel like it's such an important thing to do. And the best example of why listening and observing is important that I can give you is whenever we have an assessment day and we start with introductions, if one candidate starts in a very specific way, so if they say, "Hi, my name is, I don't know, Kate, I am in my year 13 studying towards my A-levels at the moment," everyone else will follow and everyone else is going to mention their name, their age group, and then the subjects that they take at their A-levels or BTEC. So from that perspective, there is a lot that will help you read the situation, and you can get many clues from how other people are behaving. It's also with regards to your assessors. If you can see that your assessor is getting a little bit agitated on the camera, then most likely they need you to cut down your response and to be a little bit more concise. If you can see that your assessor is looking somewhere on the side, then probably maybe they have some technical issues. So all of those things you can gauge from what is happening and from listening and observing. And then last but not least, stress management. Stress is a very common thing and is something that we all experience when we go into an interview or when we are applying for a job. So it's important to have it under control on the day so that it doesn't get the best of you. From that perspective, I think the way to help yourself to manage stress is to know what to expect. And other than all of the points that we've been covering before around technology, around preparation, doing your research, it is also very important to seek feedback and to have a really good understanding of what your strengths and weaknesses are and to build your self-awareness. The reason why I say this is because if I know that I am good at, customer service, then when I have a customer service exercise, I will feel comfortable and confident that I can do well in that activity. If I know that I'm not so good with my communication skills, and I know that there will be a communication related exercise on the day, I know that I have put much more effort into preparing that area and preparing my responses with regards to this capability and this skill. So hopefully you know more or less how to prepare for an assessment day. Let's narrow it down now to interview process. So how to prepare for an interview? There is a number of things that you can do in advance, and the most basic thing that so many candidates forget to do or don't have time to do is to research and to reflect. So when I say research, there are three main areas that any employer will be asking you about. And that's your motivation for the industry, your motivation for that company, and your motivation for this specific role. That means that if you are applying for a role in, let's say, fintech industry or maybe in a law firm, you really want to know what are the trends within that sector. Why do you want to work in this specific sector? What are the opportunities and challenges? What are the biggest companies in that sector as well? What is the current news related to that sector? So if you're applying for finance industry, can you talk about any news story? Because you may hear questions about that during your interview. Then the company, you want to know what are their key products and services. So what the company does, what is their culture like? Do they have any specific values? What do they talk about in their social media? Right now we have so many different platforms that you can refer to. You can go to company's website, you can go to their LinkedIn profile, you can actually go and approach people who work for that company. So from that perspective, I would encourage you to get a really good understanding of what they do, who they are, who their key competitors are, so that again, you can demonstrate all of that during your interview. And then last but not least, having a really good understanding of the role. What would be your core responsibilities if you get this job? What you will like about the role, and what do you think will be challenging for you? What does the team do? What does the department do? Those are questions that you might be asked during the interview, and answer to all of them should be available to you within the job description. So it's important to have all of those three topics covered and to be prepared to answer questions around why this industry, why this employer, and why this specific role. Moving on, we then want to make sure that you know your CV. Now you may think, how come? Obviously, I know all of my CV, I wrote it. But I can tell you that during any interview process, you get so stressed that it's so easy to forget all of the details that you put in your CV. Not because you lied, but just because you're under pressure. There's a lot happening. You have people looking at you, which is obviously adding some extra stress as well. So what I would encourage you to do is to look at your CV beforehand and think about how your skills align with the role. Which work experiences, which extracurricular activities will help you become successful in this role that you're applying for? And then what competencies would you hope to gain or improve on within this role? What I would also encourage you to do is to print out your CV and have it in front of yourself during the interview. Not to read off your CV, because that's not good, but to have a reference point so that if you get flustered, if you get so stressed out that you can't remember anything, you can just have a glance and remind yourself what kind of answers you want to give and what kind of activities you want to talk about. So knowing your own CV, very important and very helpful during interview process. So then you want to prepare examples, and you want to think about competencies for the role beforehand. So you want to go through the job description, highlight the skills that they are looking for, and make sure that you can come up with an example or an answer for each of those areas. When I say prepare examples, what I see candidates do a lot when they are under stress is to come up with any situation that would even remotely match what you're being asked for. So if I'm asking about working in a team, you just come up with any situation where you worked in a team without thinking as to whether you were successful or whether it was unsuccessful. So here we are. I need you to think about successful situations from your past. So if you've had an opportunity to work in a team and you achieved something amazing, that's the example that you want to focus on, rather than coming up with a scenario where you were working in a team and actually you didn't manage to complete project on time. You also may want to focus on using the STAR format. So I don't know if you've heard about STAR format, but it is a very useful technique to manage your time and to structure up your answers. So that you cover enough detail, but also so that you're fairly structured and concise. So from that perspective, STAR stands for situation, task, action, and results. And we are going to go into details of how to use this technique in my next slide. So then I also wanted to tell you that it's always good to prepare your own questions. You have to remember that an interview is a two-way process. And as much as it is an opportunity for us to get to know you, it's also an amazing opportunity for you to get to know us as an employer. What that means is that I want you to prepare questions so that you can have a really good understanding of what the role is, what the team looks like, how many people are in the team, what are the main challenges for the team at the moment. You may want to ask your interviewer about their specific role and how they fit into this recruitment process. Questions are an opportunity to build your understanding, but also to build rapport with your audience. So from that perspective, they also show your engagement and your preparation. So the easiest question that you can ask, and that works in any kind of scenario, is to ask about your interviewer's role or to ask about the team. But if there's anything else you want to know, feel free to address all of those questions at the end of your conversation. And then networking. I think I've mentioned it before when we were talking a little bit about LinkedIn and all of the amazing opportunities that you have these days. I would really encourage you to reach out to people working in similar positions within the company you're applying for, and to find out more about what they do, what their day-to-day looks like, what they like about their role, what are the main challenges, where the industry is going, anything you want really. This is going to show that you are very proactive, that you've done your research, that you don't shy away from communicating with people, and you are able to basically work to your own initiative. So from that perspective, I know it's a little bit cringy to reach out to people that you don't know, but at the same time, it is something that you will build on during your employment, and something that will definitely help you to network. And then last but not least, practice. I could not encourage you enough to practice before your interview. Practice with your mom, practice with your friend, practice with your extended family, practice with your school career advisors, with your teachers, wherever have an opportunity, practice. Again, interview is a stressful situation, regardless of how confident and comfortable you are. There's always this element of being exposed, of people assessing you. And from that perspective, you really want to make sure that you are well prepared. Practice helps you to get on top of your nerves, and it helps you come across as a more confident, comfortable, credible individual as well. The only caveat to that is to be really careful with preparing your answers. And this is where I would say that having full sentences ready in front of you never works. From my perspective, it's very easy to come across as scripted or too rehearsed. And from that perspective, you're no longer genuine, natural, organic. So what I do if I'm interviewing somewhere is that I prepare for myself some bullet points, even one word that will help you and will guide me towards what I want to say. And I have it somewhere around me so that I can always have a glance and always refer to it. But I never focus on reading out all of the sentences that I've prepared before. And I would encourage you to not prepare any sentences, but just a list of bullet points of what you want to cover. And then once you have that list, practice, practice, practice in front of a mirror. You can record yourself, you can practice with people, but it will help you to get in that zone of interviewing and providing and delivering those answers. I'm going to move on to the STAR format, and then we will have some time for more questions before I close up. So I know that I referred before to this technique for structuring up your answers. So again, STAR stands for situation, task, action, and results. It is a way of describing situation in a manner that will help your audience follow you. So from that perspective, as if you were telling a story to your colleague or your family, you want to start with bigger context, bigger picture. So this is where typically you would talk about what the situation was. So you may want to say, I was assigned to a team to do a research project at university or at school. One of our team members wasn't showing up for the meetings and they were not helping with the work. That's a brief enough description of what the situation was, and it sets the context for whatever you're going to talk about later. So then you want to highlight what the task was so that it's really clear what was the main issue, the main problem that you're trying to resolve in here. So you may want to say that we had 3 weeks to write up a group report based on an experiment we did in class. So then comes the most important part, which is action. And this is where you can really demonstrate what you did to address this problem and how you helped to get to a solution. So for action, you want to talk about what your specific activity, specific actions were. So you may want to say that you met with the person in private and you asked if there was anything you could do to help. Typically, this part of your answer would take most of the time, and that's the part that you should focus most on. And then you close up with your results. So you really want to sum it up with what kind of outcome did you get from the situation. So you may want to say that the colleague was grateful and able to continue and contribute with the team. And in the end, you finished on time with expected results. So you can see that it really helps you to provide the full picture behind what the situation was and to make sure that you've covered all of the bases, and it gives a really good baseline for your interviewers to then ask you follow-up questions with regards to the situation if they need to. Right, Heather, I'm going to park it in here so that we have some time for questions on interviews, and I wanted to check if we have anything in the chat.
We do. It's been busy again, so I'll start right away because we've got about 10 minutes left of the session. Quick one, you'll be able to answer this very quickly. For Bloomberg, are the assessment days in person or virtual?
Great question. So at the moment, assessment days are virtual. So from that perspective, we would definitely love to go back to in-person delivery when we can. However, at the moment, all of the business areas are recruiting virtually. We still cannot have visitors in our office. So most likely it would be via Zoom.
Brilliant. Great. There's another question here, which is, what if the candidate has social anxiety, dyslexia, or dyspraxia?
Yeah, we absolutely welcome all of candidates coming from different backgrounds and with different abilities. So from that perspective, you will find that when you apply for a role, you will get a confirmation email. And at the bottom of that email, there's always a clause saying that if you need any specific adjustments for your recruitment process, you should let us know as soon as possible. So what I would encourage you to do is to flag your adjustments or your circumstances to your recruiter recruiter as soon as possible, so that we can identify the ways to make sure that you can perform to your full abilities during this recruitment process. There is a number of ways and a number of things that we can do for you, whether it's a time extension, whether it's making sure that you can complete certain activities in private. We definitely want to hear from you and have that open conversation as to how we can support you.
Brilliant. That's really good. There was a few comments and discussions going on in the chat actually around what to do or top tips on how to handle nerves. And I really did relate with one of the comments that went in, which was about when your mind goes blank. I think we've all had it in one situation or another. I think over time with experience, you learn just to kind of ride the wave and you'll get there. But in your opinion, you know, what would you say is the best way to deal with that moment when your mind goes blank, and also just the nerves in general?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been in that kind of situation multiple times in the past, and I think that it's really important to identify the ways of coping with that kind of situation. I would say that the first thing that comes to my mind is taking a deep breath. So before I go to any big presentation, any big meeting where I know that I will have to perform to the best of my abilities and I will be in the spotlight, I just take a couple of deep breaths and I just like shake it off, you know, like almost like when you see it in the movies. It really works because it just mobilizes your neuronal system. And from that perspective, it really helps you to just refresh yourself. And then when you go completely blank, this is where I think that it's important to have your CV in front of yourself and a couple of bullet points. Because then you can just refer to what is in front of you, and at least you have some talking points that you can refer to when you completely went blank. So from that perspective, I think, again, preparation is going to help you make sure that you are prepared for what is coming. Like the more you know about what is going to happen on the day, the more comfortable you will be with those activities when they arrive. And then the more preparation you put into it, again, the more confident in yourself you will be. But if it happens anyway, just say, okay, can I have a minute? Shake it off, take a deep breath. Look at your CV, identify something that you can talk about, and then start replying.
And I think, well, that's just brilliant advice. And it does kind of pull back to something that you said around preparation, where you were talking about say things out loud, kind of rehearse and film yourself. And I can speak from my own experience over time where you do feel less nervous when you know that you've said it before and you've heard yourself before. And as ridiculous as you do feel at the time doing it to yourself, you just, I feel ridiculous anyway, but it has meant that in certain stressful situations, I've been able to kind of put my mind back to that time and know that I've done it before. And I wish that I'd have known that earlier on in my, career and experiences, because I think that it really does help. Got another question here around the STAR method. I think you can probably explain this quite well. He says, as the STAR method is very common, does it mean you risk not standing out from other applicants? But really, it's the method rather than what you're saying is going to make you stand out. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Like I can use the STAR method and be completely boring, and I can use the STAR method and be outstanding, It's almost the way you tell the story rather than any specific things that you say. So when I say STAR format, I don't want you to go like, so the situation was X, Y, and Z. So the task was X, Y, and Z. It's more to remember, okay, I need to tell them about the bigger picture and the context first. Otherwise, they will not understand what the situation was. I need to be very clear about what was wrong with that situation, because maybe they don't work in that industry. Maybe they don't understand all of the ins and outs. I need to be specific as to what happened and where things went wrong. So then you have your actions. And I think this is the most relatable and the easiest part of STAR format, because we always talk about what we did, what we didn't do, and so on. And then the result is just a really nice form of summarizing and capturing what you landed on. So from that perspective, don't be afraid that you're not going to stand out, because it's much more about the content of what you provide using the STAR format, if that makes sense, rather than going with any scripted, okay, so the situation was X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, brilliant. That's really well put together. Thank you. There were some questions around the apprenticeships in general. One says, and I know you're going to cover this, so I'm just going to ask this one question, then go on to the rest of your presentation, just to kind of wind up the session. Where do you recruit? Where, and are they nationwide? I believe it's just London. Is that right?
Yes, correct. So, yeah, now that you know all of those things and how to really excel in your application form and your interview process, I think it's important to just briefly mention what apprenticeships we offer at Bloomberg. And from that perspective, I feel like this slide is really helpful. As Bloomberg, we are obviously data news insights company. So from that perspective, we have so many different roles in so many different departments. So if you're looking for roles in technology, you have your digital technology solutions, you have audiovisual roles, you have data analyst level 4, IT level 3, and the data technician level 3, all of them open at the moment. All of the roles are in London. And we are open to applications from all around the UK. So even if you are based elsewhere, but you're happy to move to London or to commute to London, we would welcome your application. We have our roles within finance kind of space. So that's our applied finance level 6 apprenticeship program. Then if you are more interested in the journalism and media side of things, you can see our junior journalist apprenticeship, broadcast production assistant, and digital marketing. And then we have a variety of other apprenticeships in our support teams. So whether it's HR, whether it's legal and compliance, whether it's our philanthropies department, if you are interested in project management, business administrations, we have opportunities in those areas as well. And in order to find them, I would encourage you to type apprenticeship at Bloomberg in Google search box, and then it's going to take you to our apprenticeship website. At the bottom of the page, you have all of the opportunities listed, and all of them are live at the moment. So that's it from me. Hopefully the session was helpful. Please feel free to add me on LinkedIn. And if you feel like you've got any more questions, I'm happy to expand there and connect with you there. But I really hope that the session was helpful and insightful and enjoyable as well, and that it will help you be more successful with your recruitment process soon.
It was brilliant. Thanks, Daria. And I've just found that URL and popped it into the chat there in the Q&A section. I'll just pop it into the chat as well. Just while we're here, there's a lot of people saying thank you. Great session. Thanks everybody who's here. Thanks everybody who's asked a question. Hopefully you've got everything that you need. Yeah, lovely. Thank you. Goodbye, everybody.
Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.